Hey everybody, David Fernandez here. This is Marlins Talk for Loaded Bases on the 5 Reasons Sports Network. We'll talk briefly today about the weekend series with the Mets, preview the series with the Toronto Blue Jays, then talk some trade deadline and some possible prospect promotions. So, over the weekend, the Marlins saw their 5 game winning streak snapped by the New York Mets. There was a pair of frustrating losses in there on Saturday and Sunday. They did take Friday's game 4-3, but throughout the weekend, the Marlins just couldn't seem to get the big hit or the big out. Yes, the umpiring was terrible, but all in all, kind of a frustrating weekend for the Marlins. Now, it wasn't all bad, though. On Friday, we saw the MLB debut of Humberto Mejia, who was pretty good in his 2 1/3 innings of work, 6 strikeouts for him. He showed some flashes of potential for the future. We'll see what he looks like if he gets another start this week. Dan Castano also debuted, but he wasn't as good. Both showed potential, but we'll see on them. The real bright spots from the weekend were Eddie Alvarez and Jesus Aguilar. So Eddie Alvarez played great defensively all weekend, including what was possibly a game-saving play on Friday night. And on Sunday, Alvarez picked up his first hit and then ultimately went 3 for 4 with a double and a stolen base. His 8th inning double looked for a moment like it was going to tie that game, which would have been incredible. Aguilar looked good too. So Aguilar connected on a 2-run homer versus DeGrom and really got the Marlins back into that game on Sunday. 6 of Aguilar's 11 hits thus far have gone for extra bases, and he leads the team in batting average, slugging percentage, and OPS. He's second on the team in RBIs. Aguilar has looked really good in the middle of that order. Now, there was some bad over the weekend, right? The Marlins were 4 for 17 combined with runners in scoring position on Saturday and Sunday. They stranded 10 runners on Sunday, and they stranded 9 of them on Saturday. Versus DeGrom on Sunday, they had a chance to maybe push him from the game early after loading the bases with 1 out in the 2nd inning. But Monte Harrison struck out, and unfortunately, Jonathan Villar followed with a ground out. Monte and JV combined to go 0 for 9 on Sunday, including 0 for 6 with runners in scoring position and 8 strikeouts. It's really, really hard to win a game when you have 2 hitters going 0 for 9 with 8 strikeouts in the game. Against the Mets in total, JV went 1 for 15 with 9 strikeouts in the series. That's after going 6 for 14 with a homer, 2 RBIs, and 2 walks in Baltimore. They need Jonathan Villar to be productive and to be on base if this team is going to win. So after the game on Sunday, the Marlins moved over to Buffalo, New York, where they're going to start a 2-game series with the Toronto Blue Jays this evening. The Blue Jays enter Tuesday with a 5-8 record. They're 3.5 games behind the Yankees in the AL East. They've lost 3 out of 5 coming in, and they're led by outfielder Teoscar Hernandez, who has 4 homers and 7 RBIs. Cavan Biggio also has 4 homers and 7 RBIs, but he's only hitting 192 on the year. Some of the other big names on the Blue Jays, Bo Bichette and Vlad Guerrero Jr., they're hitting pretty well, but they only have 3 homers between the 2 of them. As a team, the Blue Jays are last in runs per game this year. They only score 3 runs per game. And the strikeout rate for this group is about 23%. So the Marlins have an opportunity here to maybe grab a couple early wins this season. For Toronto, Hyun-Jin Ryu starts for them this evening. He's 1-1 with a 5.14 ERA. He's coming off his first win of the year after going 5 innings pitched, giving up only 1 hit, getting 8 strikeouts. He did walk 3 batters, and he did this against the Braves. In 2019, Ryu was awesome. He was 14-5 with a 2.32 ERA, and he was 10-1 with a 1.93 ERA at home. But the home for the Blue Jays is very, very different this year. They're not in the Sky Dome in Toronto. They're in their AAA stadium in Buffalo, New York. On Wednesday, the Blue Jays are going to throw Nate Pearson, who's making his 3rd career start. Pearson hasn't received a decision yet, and he has a 2.70 ERA early on with 10 strikeouts and 10 innings pitched. The Blue Jays have lost both games that he's started. For the Marlins, they're countering with Eliezer Hernandez, who looked really good in his first start against Baltimore. He threw 4 2/3 innings and he got 5 strikeouts. And then they follow that with Jordan Yamamoto, who didn't look so great in his start, but he did manage to get 4 strikeouts in 4 innings pitched. So the Marlins have an opportunity here moving into the next week to pick up a couple more wins, right, as they're moving on to play the Toronto Blue Jays, and then they'll come home for their home opener. Now, MLB, it feels like the season has just started, right? But the trade deadline is actually right around the corner. It's August 31st this season, and at 7-3, the Marlins are actually in the driver's seat in the NL East at the moment. They're in first place thanks to winning percentage, and they have a firm grip on a playoff spot. Remember, 8 teams are making the playoffs this season in each league. So the Marlins right now have set themselves up with this hot start to make a run for the playoffs. Remember, the Marlins haven't been in the postseason since 2003. It's the second longest playoff drought in the MLB, behind only the Seattle Mariners, who last made the playoffs in 2001. Now, I can't really see the Marlins making a big move at the trade deadline this season. They have 18 players on the IL, so it's going to feel like if those guys are able to get back into the lineup and back into the rotation and back into the bullpen, it's going to feel almost like getting midseason trades. We haven't seen Jorge Alfaro at all this season, right? So putting him into the lineup instead of seeing Ryan Lavarnway, right, that's going to make a huge difference for this club. The players on the IL have all reportedly been either asymptomatic or with relatively mild symptoms, and most of them are feeling better. Now, the catch here is they need to get 2 straight negative test results before really getting back into the fray, right? And then once they resume those baseball activities, they have to get back into baseball shape, which may take a little bit of time. Now, if the Marlins end up falling back, they hit a losing skid and they want to sell off some of their veteran pieces, you might look at somebody like Jonathan Villar as a potential piece that could be moved, right? Villar is going to be a free agent next year. The same is true for Jose Urena, who could go to a team that maybe needs a starter or somebody in the back end of the bullpen if he comes back healthy. And the Marlins also might look to deal Caleb Smith. He's moving into his arbitration years, left-handed pitcher, right? Quality starter. Could be somebody that the Marlins try to get something for, especially considering he's a little bit older than some of the other starters in the rotation and obviously older than the prospects that are coming up, right? Another possible trade option could be Lewis Brinson. He's kind of out of minor league options, and he's at sort of the end of his rope here with the Marlins. But it's hard to see the team going after one of the big names, right? There's talk of maybe Jock Peterson being available from the Dodgers because of their depth, somebody like Jackie Bradley Jr. from the Red Sox because they're struggling, or even the Indians' Francisco Lindor. And it'll take quite a bit to pry Lindor away from the Indians. I don't know if the Marlins are willing to make any of those big-time moves. If they're looking for maybe a starting pitcher, Arizona's Robbie Ray was available over the winter and last summer. He could be an option. And then Toronto has a starter in Ken Giles who might be a possible trade target for the Marlins as well. Now, again, we don't know if the Marlins are going to make this kind of move. They might be just sort of playing with house money at this point, making a run for the playoffs a year ahead of when they were supposed to contend, but we'll see, right? So for the Marlins, there's been some talk of potential prospect promotions, right? They have such a deep farm system. MLB Pipeline just came out with their updated rankings, and the new names are there, right? Max Meyer is there. The draft has been updated in the new top 30 for the Marlins, and it's an exciting group of names, right? And the Marlins have a consensus top 5 farm system at this point, and you really wonder if they want to push some of these guys forward, right? Michael Hill said during the COVID hiatus that they're not going to call up a prospect who they don't feel is ready. And obviously that was true because they didn't call up Sixto Sanchez or Edward Cabrera or Jazz Chisholm or Lewin Diaz or Jesus Sanchez. And these are all names that people have talked about, right? So the Marlins are being really, really, really cautious with Sixto Sanchez. He's the team's top prospect. They're building up his arm these days. Reports are he's up to about 3 innings pitched down there in the alternate site in Jupiter. He'll need to get to at least 5 innings pitched or maybe 80 pitches, right, in order to even be considered for a starting pitcher position, right? He has to get to that point in order to justify that call-up, you know. But with somebody like Jazz Chisholm, you look at Jazz and he seems to be on the cusp, right? Somebody who could have been up with this last group, somebody who might be up at the end of 2020, right? But for Chisholm, both Jonathan Villar and Miguel Rojas are ahead of him. It's hard to see the Marlins promoting Jazz with both Villar and Rojas still on the team. Now, if Villar gets traded or if Miguel Rojas is slow to come back from the COVID IL, then maybe Jazz gets a look towards the end of the season. But at this point in time, he has 2 guys ahead of him. The same is actually true for Lewin Diaz. Jesus Aguilar, as we've talked about earlier, he looks great thus far. Garrett Cooper is also ahead of him, although he's on the COVID IL. Something would have to happen in order for the spot to open up for Lewin Diaz to come up in that spot. Jesus Sanchez might ultimately get a look, especially if the team decides to move off of Lewis Brinson at some point, but the Marlins have a real logjam in the outfield. Monte Harrison is not going anywhere. He's going to get a look in center field. Right field right now is the platoon with Lewis Brinson and Matt Joyce. If the Marlins move off of one of both of those guys, maybe Sanchez gets the call at that point. But remember, Harold Ramirez is on the IL, and he's expected back at some point too. And I can't imagine they're going to move Corey Dickerson anywhere. He seems to be the everyday left fielder. Listen, all in all, the Marlins are in great shape right now. They are 7-3, atop of the NL East. They have a real shot at making the postseason for the first time until 2003. If they can split this series with the Blue Jays, or maybe even sweep this series with the Blue Jays, then they'll be even better positioned moving forward. Remember, there's a limited amount of games. They might not get to those 60 games if something happens, and it's down to winning percentage. And if they keep piling on these wins, the Marlins will be in good shape. Prior to the year, Don Mattingly said the target was 8-4 through 12 games. At 7-3 with 2 games left here, they've got a real shot to hit or exceed that target, which would be really exciting, right? Mattingly said that going 8-4 would put pressure on the other teams, and the Marlins have a real chance to do that. Thanks for joining me. Don't forget to check out our Loaded Bases podcast, right? And check out 5reasonssports.com for more great Marlins content and all of the other podcasts and shows in the